All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about writing, just the writing aspect, just the daily essay part. In another video, we'll talk about all the other language arts subjects. We're just talking right now about writing. Now, this is something that is so very important. If you look at articles talking about new college students and just how their writing skills are really lacking. So writing every day is very important. So I want to encourage you on this and for you to encourage your children on this. So let's talk about how the method is, how it's supposed to work. They write a page essay and they turn it into you, and then you correct it, you give your feedback, and then you return it to them, and they take care of the errors or they rewrite it. Simple enough, but I know there's a lot of questions with this. So we're going to go over all of it, all the specifics and recommendations, suggestions, because I have seen my daughter go from not wanting to write or not knowing what to write about to writing 3-4 pages. And so I'm going to share with you some tips that got us to that point. So let's dive into it. So as far as the essay writing, I recommend that they do double spaced, every other line. That gives you space for you to write the correct spelling or the punctuation and, whatever feedback you want to give, and then you give it back to them. Okay, so what if you're starting this program with young children and how to even get them to write a whole page essay? Or maybe you're just new to the program with an older child and this seems like a very daunting task. Well, the best thing to do is just copy work. Lots of great copy work. Let them copy other great literature. I have one daughter who loves copying from the Book of Knowledge, and she always learns something new, which is just a win-win. They're copying from great literature. They're copying it, they're understanding it, they're absorbing it, and then they're learning something if it's from the Book of Knowledge or a book like that. So just let them do copy work. For how long? Just as long as it takes for a while. Just let them copy until they feel comfortable with their penmanship or just the spacing, writing on the paper. And then you can move on to, if it's a really young child, maybe they're just going to do 2-3 sentences of copy work. Maybe if you're just starting out, I'm talking 6, 7, 8-year-olds, just a couple lines of a book or scripture or something that you've written down, their address, their name, their birthday, whatever. And then they'll move on to copying a little bit more. An older child, 10 years old or whatever, they can copy a full page from the Book of Knowledge. Just more copy work. You're just moving on from a few sentences to a paragraph, to a couple paragraphs, to a full page. Then after that, maybe they want to start writing their own original stuff. After a while, they won't want to. They'll get tired of copying other people's great works, and they'll want to produce some of their own. They'll want to produce their own content. So let them just start with a couple sentences of original thought, and then a paragraph of their own original material. Maybe it's a poem, or maybe it's a letter to a friend. That counts for us if they want to write a letter to a grandparent or a friend. Maybe they want to write the grocery list or a recipe instructions. Whatever they want to write, give them that free license to just write. And then you eventually just transition into writing front and back, double spaced, an essay of original thought. And again, it could be a short story, it could be a novel, it could be a persuasive essay trying to convince you of something. It could be just kind of a description. It could be just a descriptive essay, a child talking to you about their favorite toy or talking to you about their best friend. The important thing is obviously that they just write every day and that they just have this love of writing. I have made a couple of videos breaking down that process exactly of how to start a child to that process of writing an essay. So I will link that in the description and in a handout for this video. So you'll be able to, you can watch that in more detail. So once they're at that point where they're writing an essay every day and they're handing it to you for correction, some parents choose to just focus on one area of correction at a time. I like to just do all of it, punctuation and spelling, and hand it back to them. I think it's important to give them good feedback as well as negative feedback. They put a lot into their work, so you obviously want to encourage them and point out things that you liked. And I learned that tip from the Dr. Fred Ray Librand writing course. Now, I would recommend you just do this method, just how RC explains it. However, if you've done this for a while and there's still a lot of frustration and you feel like you need a little bit more help and guidance, I wouldn't recommend any of the big writing curriculums that have a lot of rules, a lot of structure, where you're basically, you know, the type where you're getting a word from each sentence that you're reading and then you make your own summary and then you have to write your own essay. Rather than going down that route, I would recommend, if you wanted to do something, do the Dr. Fred Ray Librand writing course. It's fantastic. He also used the Robinson curriculum himself. He gets it. He understands the whole self-taught concept and just equipping children to do their best. And I've done videos on that course as well if you want to check it out, but just maybe not just using a red pen to correct, but a red and a green, and mark down with the green the areas that you really liked. That's really encouraging for a child to see that. That course really just helps you and will help your children to enjoy writing, to remove the fear and enjoy writing, which I just didn't see in any other writing program out there. But this is very different. It's not about rules. It's just about the method and really enjoying writing. And that is how my daughter got to writing 3 or 4 pages. Now, we will talk more about spelling in the next video, but I do want to mention that I've noticed with my 12-year-old that her spelling has very much improved as just time goes on. The more she reads the books from the RC list, the better her vocabulary is getting and the less errors that she's making. So trust the process. The process does work. If you want a little bit more help with spelling though, we're going to talk about the Professor K spelling in the next video. Now, to give you an example, recently my 12-year-old daughter finished a 24-chapter story and she really loved writing this, and then she would draw a picture for each chapter. And I thought the story was over when I corrected the last one, but then she did a chapter 25 and she said, and she titled it A Letter from Chelsea, which is one of the characters in the story. And it was Dear Reader, and it had an update to where everybody was. I thought that was really neat. I thought that was really cool that she would think to even do that. And it's not something that I taught her. It's just from reading good books. It's just from reading the books on the list, how at the end, who doesn't enjoy a little character recap where everybody's at now? And so I thought that was really neat that she included that as the last chapter. I didn't tell her to do that. She did that on her own. And so what I told her we could do next, if she wanted to, again, I understand no electronics, but I think it would be fun for her to either type up the story if I find a typewriter, or maybe I'll just let her do it on the computer. Type up her story 1 chapter a day. That will count as her writing. And we'll scan all her pictures and we'll actually create a real book, maybe through Shutterfly or another one of these, you know, print your own book places. And then she'll have this forever. This was her first kind of really long story that she wrote. So I share that with you just to encourage you that this really can be whatever you make it out to be. I mean, they can be writing stories, and you could just take that little extra step and maybe bind it for them, make it special. My daughter recently wrote a story, my 10-year-old, on a story from the perspective of the ants in the backyard when we were laying out rocks. And we just did a comb bind with that. She did several pages and pictures, and we just did a comb binding. And so that was really fun. Just encourage writing, encourage a love of writing. Now, I just want to share with you some tips that have really worked well here at our house to encourage writing more than just 1 page front and back. I used to have them redo the entire essay, no matter how many errors were on the page. And so I realized after some feedback from my children that that was really discouraging them from writing really long essays, because they knew they would have to rewrite the whole thing. So then they were just trying to write just the minimum, because they knew they had to rewrite the whole thing. So then we changed it to erasing and fixing the errors on the page. Yes, I'm correcting with the pen on top of the line. Then they will just erase the word on the bottom and rewrite it or add the punctuation. And just doing that change really motivated them to let loose and be able to write more than just a page or 2 pages because they knew they didn't have to rewrite the whole thing. So that's something maybe you want to keep in mind. Now, the only caveat to that is if it's a paper turned in where I see that there was just a lot of carelessness, maybe taking advantage of that policy. They didn't really put a lot of effort into it. It's all just kind of misspellings, then they will rewrite it. If I see that you're really trying and you're writing a lot, then that's fine. You can correct them on the same page. But if I see that you're just throwing something together, very careless, tons of misspellings and errors, and I know you didn't really try, then you will have to rewrite the whole thing. So that's another motivation to get them to really try. Now, as far as spelling, this is something that we tried and implemented, and it worked really great while my daughter was writing this past story. Is I noticed that she was getting sort of the same words wrong over and over. And so I asked her, why didn't you just go back to the previous chapter and where I had that correction and just copy that correct spelling? And she said, well, I thought that was cheating. So like, no, it's not cheating. Nothing says that you can only use the knowledge that you have from today. It's perfectly fine to go back to previous essays, previous chapters, and look at the spelling there. The point of spelling and how to be a good speller is not to guess, and using all the tools that you have available to not guess, to be able to spell correctly. And in a 12-year-old's world, that includes going back to her previous essays and seeing how she spelled it there. So then we took it a step further and she started creating a little cheat sheet. Every time she got a word wrong, she would also write it down on a list. And so it just kind of became her little cheat sheet of all the words that she was having a hard time spelling. So when she'd start a new essay, she'd take out her cheat sheet of frequently misspelled words for her and she'd put it out on the table and she wrote her essay. This really helped out in reducing spelling errors big time. Then I noticed she started making different spelling errors because she was trying new words. She was branching out to newer and harder words. So those were the misspelled words, and her previous challenge words, she had them correct. So that's something else that you might consider, doing a little cheat sheet. Have them write down the words that they're frequently spelling wrong. Another thing you could do is teach them how to use the dictionary. And this is another tip from the Dr. Lybrand course is, not to guess. Just using all the tools at your disposal, not to guess. You can use the dictionary or create your own little dictionary, your own cheat sheet. All right, so let's talk about probably the most frequently asked questions on the writing, and that is the aspect of it being for 1 hour. Should they sit there and write for 1 hour? What if they get done really early? What if it takes them really long? So I think the hour is a good guide, but you shouldn't really obsess about it. For my daughter, it takes her 2 hours. When she's doing these really long chapters, she's really pouring her all into it. She's looking back at the previously misspelled words. She's trying to get the least amount of errors. And so it's going to take time. It takes her about 2 hours. Perfectly fine with me. No issue. Now I have another daughter who's 10 and her daily essays don't take 2 hours. She's still doing a lot of copywork. She's still mixing in some copywork from the Book of Knowledge and writing her own things. But typically it's the most that she could do is a page front and back. And so she's done a lot sooner. Her vocabulary is obviously less than my 12-year-old. And so it's very different. She's done earlier. So if she's done writing her full page essay, front and back, double spaced, if she's done with that and it didn't even take an hour, then she can finish the hour by working on her penmanship and vocabulary. That's usually what we do every day. And my 12-year-old daughter, she obviously still works on her penmanship and vocabulary. So it's fine if it takes some children longer than others. It's okay. As long as everything gets covered, it's fine. For us, we just try to get everything done by lunchtime, except for the 2-hour reading portion. And if it does have to trickle over once in a while after lunch, it's okay. And again, some kids, if you tell them that they just have to write for an hour, they might just try to run the clock out and wait to be saved by the bell. So I think the better guide is just front and back essay. Now, obviously, if they're a lot younger, they're just starting out, you're not going to require them to do a front and back essay. Maybe it's just a couple sentences, a paragraph. You decide what's best for your child, but have some kind of writing goal. So I think the writing goal is more important than the clock, than the hour, right? Having them write a paragraph if they're younger, or copy a paragraph, or a front and back essay. That is the end goal. That is when you know you're done. That is when you know you have completed writing for the day. Focus on that versus more than just the hour of writing. And if you try some of these tips that I shared with you, I think you're going to have a great time with this and see a lot of success and create a lot of fun memories and fun projects and produce writings that you and your children will probably treasure for the rest of your lives. So I hope this video was helpful, and now we're going to move on to vocab, spelling, grammar, and penmanship.